Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a science that supposedly died out decades ago. But here's the twist. Its ideas are secretly running our entire world.
All right, so let's jump right in. Imagine this, a whole field of study that just vanishes. It disappears from universities, from public debate, gone. But at the same time, its core ideas are more powerful now than its founders ever dreamed. It's really like a ghost in the machine of our world.
Okay, so to really get what's happening now, we've got to go back to the beginning. What was this science, and how in the world did it just seem to fade away?
So, back in 1948, a mathematician named Norbert Wiener comes up with this word, cybernetics. And this wasn't just some academic term. It was a radical new way of seeing the world. The big idea was that all complex systems, whether it's an animal or a machine, use the same basic principle to achieve their goals. And that secret sauce, it's all about feedback loops. A system gets information about what it's doing and then uses that info to correct its course. Super simple, but it changes everything.
Now, this whole field didn't just stand still. It moved in these three big waves. The first wave, what we call first-order cybernetics, was all about observing a system from the outside. Think of yourself as the engineer controlling a machine, kind of like how a thermostat controls the temperature in a room. Simple enough, right? But then comes the second wave, and this is a massive philosophical leap. Suddenly, the observer realizes, wait a minute, I'm part of the system I'm watching. It's a total mind-bender. And that brings us to today, the third wave, which isn't happening in universities anymore. No, this one is being driven by the giant tech corporations that shape our lives.
But here's where it gets really weird. Right when these ideas were starting to take off and become super influential, the actual word cybernetics, it just vanished. Poof. It got dropped from university courses, it disappeared from public discussions. For all intents and purposes, it looked like a failed science.
But did it really fail? Well, the philosopher Martin Heidegger had a different take. He suggested that maybe cybernetics didn't disappear at all. Maybe it became so fundamental, so absolutely everywhere, that we just stopped seeing it. Like the air we breathe. We don't think about it until there's a problem.
All right, so let's follow that trail, because the story isn't that cybernetics died, it's that it's shattered. This grand universal idea broke into pieces, and each piece evolved in a totally different way, depending on the culture and the politics of where it took root.
And this is where you can really see those differences in action. In the US, the thinking, led by people like Herbert Simon, was that problem solving is like a rat in a maze. You have a set number of paths, and intelligence is just about finding the most efficient way through. But in the Soviet Union, they had a completely different view. For them, real intelligence wasn't about navigating the maze. It was about being a butterfly that could just fly out of the maze entirely and create something new. It's a totally different philosophy of what thinking even is.
And then you've got the British approach, which was different again. Cyberneticians over there, like the brilliant W. Ross Ashby, weren't obsessed with making a machine that could think like us. Instead, they saw the brain as an acting machine. Its job isn't to perfectly represent the world in its head because the world is way too complex and messy for that. Its job is to act and to survive. It's all about doing, not just thinking.
Okay, now from theory to practice, and on an unbelievable scale. Let's go to Chile under Salvador Allende. They launched something called Project Cybersyn. This was an attempt to manage the entire national economy using cybernetics. And the really wild part? The goal wasn't some top-down, big brother style of control. It was the exact opposite. They wanted to build a decentralized, responsive system where information and power flowed from the bottom up, not just the top down.
At the same time, over in China, you have this incredible story of a scientist named Chen Xiusen. He was actually deported from the US during the McCarthy scare, and when he went back to China, he developed his own powerful version of these ideas, which he called systems engineering. This was a whole framework for optimizing huge, complex systems. We're talking everything from agriculture to industry. And its most famous and most controversial application was in creating the models that led to the one-child policy, a decision that has shaped China for generations.
And all of this, all these different threads, brings us right back to today. Because that ghost we've been talking about, that fragmented spirit of cybernetics, it's back. But it's no longer fragmented.
It's reemerged as something unified, something global, and something way, way more powerful than ever before.
The philosopher Matthew Tricklott has this great line for it. He says we are living in an age of cybernetics without cybernetics. And what he means is that all the core concepts, feedback loops, autonomous systems, information as a control mechanism, they're absolutely everywhere. We just don't call it that anymore. The label is gone, but the logic is stronger than ever.
So what is this new form? This third cybernetics? Well, it's not some dusty theory in a book. It's the living, breathing operating system of the 21st century. It's the logic behind your Netflix recommendations, it's what runs Amazon's warehouses, and it's the absolute foundation of the large language models from companies like OpenAI that are totally changing the game. At its heart, it's the logic of big tech.
And guess what? Just like in the old days, we're seeing this global idea play out differently in different places. In the US, it's all about the market. It's driven by corporate competition. Who can build the best, most profitable AI? In China, it's much more state-directed, a tool for social governance and national strategy. And then you have Europe, trying to carve out a third path that's all about regulation, privacy, and protecting human rights. It's the same fundamental technology, but with vastly different goals and values baked right in.
Okay, so this is the big question, right? Why does any of this matter? Why go back and dig up this forgotten history? Why should you care about this ghost in the machine?
Well, it matters because of this one huge idea that's at the very heart of cybernetics. Remember that shift? First-order cybernetics is easy. You're the observer, standing outside the system, pulling the levers. But second-order cybernetics? That's the game changer. It says, nope, you're inside the system. You are part of the very thing you're observing and trying to influence. You can't stand apart from it. And once you realize that, it changes absolutely everything. So bringing this history back into the light gives us three really powerful tools for dealing with the here and now. First, it helps us demolish the myth that technology is neutral. Second, it lets us recover a more humane, ethical way of thinking about these systems. And third, it opens the door to imagining totally new ways of living with our technology.
Okay, reason number one, busting the neutrality myth. Just look at the stories from the US, the Soviet Union, Chile, and China. They are living proof that technology is never, ever neutral. There isn't one universal path for AI. Instead, every technology is what some call it cosmotechnic. It's embedded with the cultural DNA, the politics, and the values of the people who built it.
Reason number two is about recovering our conscience. The guy who started it all, Norbert Wiener, he wasn't just some gearhead. He was a philosopher who was deeply worried about what he called the inhuman use of human beings. He saw the danger of a future where people become nothing more than cogs in a giant automated machine. That ethical warning, that humane part of the story, it's been almost completely forgotten, and we need it back now more than ever.
And the third reason? It gives us an escape hatch. It helps us move beyond this endless obsession with control. Thinkers like Catherine Hales talk about building a techno-symbiosis. It's a beautiful idea. It's a future where we stop trying to be the masters of our technology and instead become partners with it. We could create a kind of cognitive partnership, a team, really, of humans, nature, and machines, all working and evolving together.
And that's really the bottom line here. You can call it cybernetics, you can call it AI, you can call it machine learning. It doesn't matter. The core logic of feedback and control has become the invisible operating system for our entire world. We don't just use it. We live inside of it.
So here's the final thought to leave you with. A science that was born to understand control has ended up building a world that is increasingly controlling us. And as its ghost animates everything from our news feeds to our economies, the most urgent question isn't how do we control these systems anymore? The real question we have to ask ourselves is, how are their different logics now controlling us?